We're speaking to senior advocate and Harish Salve, who is now been nominated also to a committee that has been set up by the government of India with regard to the one nation, one election policy. Will India have simultaneous elections for the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies? That is what this committee may be looking into. First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Salve, for speaking to India today. If we can get some idea, sir, what exactly are the terms of reference of this committee? What are the issues that you're really going to be looking into, sir?
Right now, it's too early, Anisha. We haven't taken stock of all the issues that arise. Fortunately, we are not starting from ground zero. There are law commissions, there are election commissions reports.
Gee.
We will have the advantage of a lot of groundwork which has already gone in.
Gee.
And broadly, the issues will be in two dimensions which are of relevance to us. The third, I would feel, doesn't concern us. The two dimensions are the exigencies and the efficiencies, cost and administrative, of having coordinated elections versus the present situation in which we are in a constant state of elections. The second will be the legal and constitutional angle as to whether there are any bars or impediments. I mean, as you all know, the only problem is caused really by midterm dissolutions, and then the whole calendar goes awry. Because once you're out of sync, you're always out of sync. So can we have a shorter term elections? Can we have elections only for interregnums? Can we, or is it necessary to have elections every time for the full 5 years? Does it require constitutional amendments? Would the statutory amendments suffice? I mean, these are the kind of issues which will arise. And of course, I start by saying there are strong views for and against. My personal view has been for, and I have been public about it, vocal about it. But if I'm on a committee like this, I remain open to be persuaded that this should not be done. And we will obviously hear points of view from all sides. So,
sir, if I may ask, you said there are 2 points that you're talking about. The third, according to you, is not relevant. What is this third point that you mentioned?
That is the political controversy on whether it's a political advantage or not. I don't understand politics. I've never fought an election and hopefully never will. So I don't know how that works. What I want to, at this stage, it is very difficult for me to give any concrete answers to this, because this will require a lot of thinking, and which we will do in the fullness of time. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind there are two dimensions to this. One is as I said, if you have a breakdown, you have president's rule imposed, you have the assembly dissolved. If the assembly is dissolved, then the constitution requires that the president's rule be limited in point of time, and a new assembly has to be put in place, which is what then puts it out of sync forever. Till you go on. So can you have, now if you decide that, all right, we dissolve the assembly, but it will be a pro tem dissolution and the next government will pick up in coordination. So it will be an assembly of a shorter tenure or shorter term. That may require a constitutional amendment. Or if you decide that, all right, if an assembly is, I'm just saying there are so many permutations, combinations. If there's less than 1 year to run of an assembly or 2 years to run, can you in such a case have an extended precedence rule?
So one issue in that is also the fact that in the last several years, we've seen a lot of political issues coming up in various states where we've had assemblies being dissolved, we've had MLAs breaking away, we've had new governments being formed. I mean, there are states in this country which have seen almost 3 governments in the last 3 years alone. So how does this entire issue of one nation, one election then
That's what I'm saying.
coordinate with the political reality of the country?
That's what I'm saying. You know, with the divided polity and razor thin margins,
Gee.
is there some way of getting around this? Is there a minimum term prescribed for the assembly, or how do we deal with this? And it's there are problems on both ways.
So, Mr. Salve, we were talking about the various issues that because of the political realities of this country, because we've seen several states that have seen multiple governments in the last few years alone. How do you see these dichotomies of political reality and constitutional mandate of having that an assembly has to have the house has to have a 5-year term? You can't you can't extend the term, you can't reduce the term of a house.
See, that's what these are areas in which we will have to see whether there are any constitutional amendments or whether there are any exceptions. And one way around it may be that if you have these kind of situations, then and if fresh elections are forced upon you, then you have them till the next election.
Okay. So
you don't put it out of sync forever.
Okay.
And you have a truncated period.
But can constitutionally India have a truncated period?
Why not? Why not? Why not? This is not basic structure.
No, as in the sense that when there is an elected government, because there was a dissolution of the government, say for because of a no confidence motion,
there is
or MLA.
See, nobody has a vested right in any period. These are all ultimately there is only one guiding factor, solitary guiding factor. What's in public interest?
Okay.
What is best for the nation?
Okay.
We have to see the arguments for and against. Also, what happens is some things are few and far between. Okay. You may have had 3 instances of real political instability or falling of governments. How many governments have actually fallen short of? See, change of political party is not relevant. Okay. What happened in Madhya Pradesh, what happened in Maharashtra, one party resigns, another comes in. That has nothing to do with the life of the assembly. The problem arises where an assembly has to be dissolved.
Okay. Has the chairman of the committee brought out any modalities? Is there any terms of reference?
48 hours, Anisha.
Gee?
It's been 48 hours over a weekend.
Gee. So has there been any communication from the committee?
Nothing has
committee members?
I'm sure the committee will have a office and a sort of a secretariat. That will be the first step. Then the secretariat will set out. We'll have to have an initial meeting with the committee and make up a list of how we proceed, how we decide to go ahead. I'm sure the president, with his experience and his and the assistance which he may get, may draw up roadmap for how we need to go ahead, and we will have a meeting. So I'm sure all this will happen, and the government has requested us to give a report early.
The government has called for a special session of the parliament on September 18th to 22nd. There's a lot of speculation about this issue and possibly being on the agenda of the parliament at that time.
It is not for me to speculate about what the session is. I find it unlikely for the reason, if the government was going to bring a bill for securing this, then they wouldn't need a committee.
Okay.
There is no way in which we can give a report before 18th of September.
Of course.
Correct? So I don't know whether this special session is for this or it's for something else. If the government expects us to do something. Thirdly, this is purely an executive action of the government. They have appointed a committee. This committee has no, in that sense, legal status beyond being a committee appointed by the executive. We will give our report. The report will be then processed through parliamentary channels, depending on whether the executive government brings a bill. to amend the constitution, to amend the law, to bring something, and then it will hit Parliament. And that's the stage at which Parliament will consider it. So I don't think at this stage, the appointment of the committee is something which will be debated in Parliament. I mean, somebody may raise an issue as to why the government is doing this, and it may get into a discussion on that. But I would be surprised if the agenda is primarily this. It may be that the Parliament, maybe that Parliament comes into place. I see the likelihood that because Parliament is now going to come into place, the minister may be advised to inform the Parliament of the formation of the committee. The matter of propriety, that may lead to some debate discussion, but I don't think this could be the primary purpose. I mean, I have no idea why the session has been called. Look, seems unlikely.
Some countries, of course, have the presidential system, and the opposition parties in India are saying that that is what the BJP is basically aiming at, to sort of centralize the system, to change the structure of Indian politics and Indian constitutional democracy. How do you see these allegations that have been raised by the opposition, if you may?
Again, I do not know what BJP intends to do. I do not know what is on the agenda. Theoretically, should India have a presidential form of government is not something which has been discussed for the first time. This issue has come up before and it will come up again. That is not what we are supposed to debate, and that is not in our remit.
Okay.
Beyond which, if somebody has any political aspirations of doing something, that again, people who are in political parties will debate. It's not for us.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for speaking to India Today. Thank you very much for giving us this much of an insight into the issues involved. Mr. Harish Salve, thank you very much for speaking to India Today. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.